Good evening. Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. We've got a very special show. We got a super guest for you. My name is Bill Dixon. This is Bob Matthews with me. Bob has got about 40 years experience as a teacher. Has also leads a course in about 1,000 schools nationwide. We even have the course, we've done it in Vietnam, called the Lessons of Vietnam, which is also the name of our show. Tonight we're doing a town hall type meeting. So if you want to call in and ask questions, make comments or whatever, give us a call at 919-518-9773. But tonight we have as our keynote speaker and guest, we're very excited. As you know, this is North Carolina Vietnam Veterans Incorporated show. I am also a member of VVA 530 in Durham, who's sponsoring this, along with VVA National. And we're very fortunate tonight to have with us VVA President John Rowan. John, thank you for being with us, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say about Agent Orange and its problems and how we can help out the men and their children and grandchildren out there that need to help and basically educate our veterans and us about Agent Orange and its problems. Bob, you got anything to say before we get started, John?
I'm just looking forward to it. And John, there'll be a lot of questions because a lot of people have missed the information, and we've worked for this show for a couple weeks, and we hope with your expertise tonight, we can prompt some good questions and some good follow-up. So again, for all the veterans and for Lessons of Vietnam, we thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, John. Go ahead.
All right, thanks, guys. It's really good to be with you. This, of course, is a hot issue right now for us, the whole issue of Agent Orange. Agent Orange, of course, is just really a euphemism for the whole issue of the toxic substances that we used in the herbicides in Vietnam. For those people who don't know what that really means, what they did is in many of the areas in Vietnam which had high growth and vegetation, in order to clear out the area to allow people to see the enemy coming and make sure they couldn't sneak up on the air bases or hide in places along the riverfronts and around the bases out in the hinterlands, they defoliated everything. They came up with these tremendous chemicals that would just kill all the vegetation, no matter how much it was. And as a result, this was how they helped, frankly, defend all of their positions. What we didn't know at the time, of course, was that we were going to poison ourselves forever. Agent Orange, which has become the code word for all of these different toxics, which is basically dioxin. For the chemists out there, they can tell you much more about that than I can. I just know what it does to us more than what it's made out of. But the chemical defoliants have created horrible places of really bad areas in Vietnam now. And even in the United States and other places, a lot of this defoliants were used in Thailand, Korea. There's even a problem in Canada, apparently, where they tested it out. The real issue is what the effects, the long-term effects of this was on the health of those veterans who stepped in Vietnam and walked around there. And strangely enough, a lot of people presume it's the folks out in the field who got sprayed on, but in reality, more people got exposed to the things back in the base camps at the air bases where they defoliated this place so heavily that the groundwater was polluted. I remember being in Da Nang and taking showers. Of course, it was June and July of '67, and it was 130 degrees in the daytime, and you'd take about 6 showers a day just to cool off. And there was a big sign on the shower tent that said, non-potable water, do not drink. What they didn't tell you is you shouldn't have bathed in it either, because it was probably the polluted water coming out of the ground that was from the defoliation that occurred on the other line outside the base of the Air Force Base in Da Nang. For about 200 yards out, they defoliated everything in sight, so the Marines had a clear field of fire to ensure the VC couldn't infiltrate the base. What we've now found out, of course, after years of research and science and looking into this thing, back in 1981, we created the Agent Orange Act, which forced the Institute of Medicine to start looking at all the research with regards to exposures. And over time, they kept coming back with more and more illnesses that they related to exposure to dioxin, exposure to Agent Orange. And now the VA, after all these years, has finally agreed that they will compensate people and provide health care to people, Vietnam veterans who stepped foot in Vietnam, no matter where you were, even one day, if you have certain illnesses. And unfortunately, the laundry list is rather substantial. The bottom line is diabetes is one of the biggest ones, prostate cancer, lung cancer, several other cancers, all kinds of horrible things. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is a big one. Chloracne, which is a strange disease. It sounds like something you get as a teenager, but it's really very nasty version of acne that stays with you for a long time. I mean, there's a long laundry list of these diseases, but the most recent ones that we added, which was rather surprising to many people, was ischemic heart condition. So that's everybody who ever had a stent. So all of the stent in the month club that we were having in some of our meetings, when everybody'd come in and say, "Oh, I had a stent put in," and guys were having contests to see who had more stents. Unfortunately, that was really one of the signs of Agent Orange effects. When the VA agreed to add that as one of the illnesses on the list, over 250,000 veterans became automatically disabled, considered disabled veterans almost overnight. And I can tell you it was billions of dollars added to the cost of caring and compensating those veterans. We're still looking at those things. We're hoping they continue to do the research. We believe there may even be more issues out there. There's lots of strange things going on with all kinds of odd leukemias that aren't quite on the list, but we think there's a lot of relationships that need to be done. We're concerned about bladder cancer and some other things that we think needs to be taken a look at. And for those of you out there who are Vietnam veterans or family members of Vietnam veterans, you should take a look at a website called veteranshealth.org. We formed a Veterans Health Council several years ago, which brought in all the academics, advocacy groups, pharmaceutical companies, anybody interested in veterans health questions. And as a result, we've been putting out information on this website. And it's not just for the Vietnam veterans, by the way. If you click on the veteranshealth.org website, you got to click on your war. There'll be a little ribbon bar that says Vietnam or Persian Gulf or the global war on terrorism, because what we found is that the folks who went out to Iraq and Iraq in 1991, in the first Gulf War, had some horrible conditions brought on them because of the sarin gas that was used, the oil fires, frankly, a basic toxic soup that seems to have affected thousands and thousands of these Gulf War veterans, creating something called the Gulf War syndrome. For the first time in its history, the VA had to compensate people when they weren't even sure what that is that they had. They just know they were sick. And even the more recent veterans in the more recent global war on terrorism in both Iraq and Afghanistan have some strange things going on with the burn pits and other kinds of toxic exposures over there as well. So we're looking into that. What's really happening now, which is really scary, Vietnam Veterans of America has been holding town hall meetings all across the country, over almost 100 of them, right, Moki?
135.
135. It's keep getting beyond me even. The number here. It's been a phenomenal thing about going out there into the countryside, talking to veterans and their family members. One of the problems, of course, we have is that so many Vietnam veterans have already succumbed to illnesses related to Agent Orange. And sad part is, if you didn't know the illness was what caused that, the illness that killed the veteran is related to their service in Vietnam, then they certainly don't know that if they have a spouse, that spouse is entitled to compensation, dependency, indemnity compensation, because the spouse died of a service-connected illness. So we've been holding these town hall meetings, and we've been getting lots of reporting by the veterans and their families about the problems with children. Unfortunately, the number of diseases and the number of just things that affects their health and their well-being are so myriad. There's so large number of different types of things, it's hard to pinpoint. And so one of the things we've been doing, I'm down here in D.C. today. I've been running around the Senate today, and we'll be doing it for the next 2 days because we have two bills in Congress, S-2738 which is and HR 5484. They're both bipartisan bills. They have Republican and Democratic support. And we're hoping to get these bills passed this time out in this lame duck session because we don't want to wait till next year when things are going to take a while before they get themselves reorganized in the new Congress. And this act would ask the VA to do the research necessary to find out what is the effect of dioxin or these other chemicals or any other chemical on the effects of the children of veterans, whether they're from Vietnam, whether they were there in Iraq in '91, or whether they're there in Iraq today or in Afghanistan yesterday. And so we're talking with leaders in the Senate in particular, because the House leadership has pretty much agreed that they'll support the bill and fast track it if the Senate will agree to do so. So we've been meeting with the leadership in the Senate and the existing leadership in the Senate to see if we can get this thing done. So this is where we're at today, where the whole issue of dioxin and Agent Orange has become much more widespread than we ever would have imagined when we first started this out years ago. And so, unfortunately, the spread of it is gotten much worse too. And we're talking about the veterans, their children and their grandchildren, maybe even their great-grandchildren. Because one of the things that we find, and again, I'm not a scientist in this whole thing. I'm the political guy. I try to get things done. The scientists tell me that it really could have, that dioxin and all of these problem chemicals have literally affected the individual's genes. And clearly those genetic situations and problems can be passed on from generation to generation. So we really need to get a handle on this. And the only way we're going to get it done is if we can get the scientists that are around the world to do the research. So, I mean, that's where we are. That's what the issue is. And I really would love to hear from the folks out there and to see what they have to say or what questions they may have, and see what we can do to either help them out or answer some questions or give them direction.
All right, John, we've got a lot of people who have tuned in, but they haven't gone in to log into the chat. If you're out there, how about logging into the chat so you can ask your questions or make your comments or whatever while we got John on the line here. John, Admiral Zumwalt has family here in Raleigh and Cary area, and we have met with him, of course, before he passed. And as you know, his son died as a result of spraying Agent Orange. Bob, you know him better than I did. Tell him a little bit about your conversation with Admiral Zumwalt and Agent Orange.
Yes, John, we had a chance several years ago to meet with Admiral Zumwalt at Texas Tech University at the Vietnam Center there, where he was a keynote speaker for a teachers' convention. And we were invited down to present our course, Lessons of Vietnam, to about 250 Texas teachers. And Elmo Zumwalt told us about Agent Orange, why he did it, when he did it, and the repercussions of it. As Bill mentioned about his son and his daughter who lives in Cary here, we've talked with them for years about this. And before he passed, we talked quite a bit about would he do it again. And I think Admiral Zumwalt knew the long-range results of what he did were terrible, but the immediate results of what he did were necessary. He put it that way. It was like walking on eggshells, talking to him, letting him not clear his conscience, but explain his motives, why he did it, what it did then, and what it did in the long run. I think he'd do it again, if he had a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel for Admiral Zumwalt. Unfortunately, he lost his son really to Agent Orange. He had cancer that was really killed him in the end. Died very early on, very young.
Yes.
And it was a real shame. And I, you know, it's always hard to judge people in a different time in history. I mean, his job at those days was to save the men and women who were operating within Vietnam and keep them safe. And they all believed that was going to do it. I mean, Dow Chemical Company and other chemical companies basically sold them a bill of goods and said, no, it's not harmful, it's okay, don't worry about it.
Yep. You're right.
John, I'm holding up here in front of the camera the VVA's book, Service Connected Disability Compensation for Exposure to Agent Orange. This is a fantastic book. I believe you can go on VVA website and get this book. It's great information and so forth on it. Muck had sent it to us to read. And if you've got any questions that we don't get answered tonight, be sure and go on this. If you think you might be entitled for benefits, I want to give you a number here that you can call tonight and leave word, or call tomorrow, would be even better. The gentleman's name is Jim Vale. That number is 301-585-4000, extension 149. Again, if you would like to talk to someone about possibility of receiving benefits, it's 301-585-4000, extension 149, Jim Vale. John, you mentioned a little bit about problems with children. From what I've read, it's even not just in their veterans' children, but it's also their grandchildren. It kind of almost skips sometimes. The veteran may not be sick, but the child or the grandchild could have problems with. Is I correct in that assumption, or?
Yes, I think that may be true. They certainly may not have the same issues, or the same illnesses that affected the parent may not be affecting the children. There's developmental disabilities that are of concern to them, besides things, obvious things like horrible things like cancer and Parkinson's disease and multiple sclerosis and all kinds of other things like that, which are really debilitating diseases. But then there's also these developmental disability questions, cognitive development issues and other things that really leave a lot of questions up in the air. I mean, the problem we have today is, of course, what causes anything. I mean, we don't know. And until the scientists really get in there and can figure it out, it's going to be important to them to get word on. What we've suggested to people, if you think that you have a child that has a disability, it's related to perhaps exposure to Agent Orange, there is a way to file a claim for that. And we've got the VA to actually do something intelligent for a change when it comes to claims. And those claims are all being handled by one spot in VA in Denver, Colorado, I believe, in the VA regional office out there. And what we know the VA is going to deny the claim. That's not the issue. That's not a problem. We know they're going to deny it because there's nothing that says that they can approve it at this point. But one of the reasons we're asking people to file these claims is it's going to give us data on what the actual issues are related to the children. And if we see this tsunami, if you will, of claims coming in, and we can the VA is going to have to codify it, they're going to have to collect it, they're going to have to figure it out, and they're going to have to quantify it. So it'll give us an idea of what are the things we need to be looking for as we go forward with the research. Also, if at some point in the future, the VA decides that they agree with that issue of the particular disease being a problem, and that the child should receive compensation, they're going to have to go back to the date of claim of when it was actually filed to reimburse those people. Mm-hmm. That was a great decision. They call it the Niemer decision that was given out in the courts years ago. And an example of that, for instance, we knew years ago that diabetes was a problem. When I got diagnosed with diabetes in 1994, I filed my claim. It, of course, got denied because they would not say there's nothing on the books that says that's a related disease to Vietnam. When they finally did agree in 2003, I think it was, that they added diabetes to the roster of Agent Orange-related illnesses, they had to pay me back to 1994. They weren't too thrilled about that, but that's too bad. So we've been trying to tell people about certain illnesses and get them to file claims, and this is the same situation with the children. So again, we encourage you, there is a whole separate format for filing these claims with the kids. We can get you the information on that. Jim Vale, if you ask Jim Vale or write Jim Vale. You can also send Jim an email. It's JVALE, jvale at VVA, VictorVictorAlpha.org, O-R-G. And I'm sure Jim would be happy to send you the materials and give you the information on how to go about filing a claim for your child. The one thing I'm really concerned about is the widows out there. I've just run into too many of them at different events and things, and the husband died of a heart attack, or a heart disease in 1996 or something, and we only got the ischemic heart condition added a couple of years ago, so that there's no way that they ever would have associated that with military service. But it is. And so they can, while they can't get retroactive money, they can at least start to collect what is called dependency indemnity compensation. And it's exactly what it sounds like. If you're a dependent of a veteran who dies of a service-connected illness, you're entitled to your own compensation. Now, some veterans had parents they were taking care of, but that were their dependents. They'd be entitled to this compensation. Some of them still had adult children that might have been dependents for whatever reason. Maybe they had issues, health issues, whatever, that they were dependent on that veteran. They'd be entitled to dependency indemnity compensation. So this is a very good benefit that the VA gives out, but it's not going to give it to anybody if they don't know it's there, and if they don't apply for it. One of the things about the VA, they don't, doesn't matter how many years later you apply for anything, but you have to apply. I mean, I used to be a service rep for a while back in the early 2000s, and I mean, I filed claims for World War II veterans right up to present day veterans. And so we really encourage everybody to do that. If you think you're entitled to it, file it. The worst thing to do is say no, and then but don't do it by yourself. Make sure you get a veteran service officer from VVA or one of the other veterans organizations or the state. A lot of times state agencies have counselors who will help people file claims with the VA.
John, you do not have to be a member of VVA to have someone, VVA, to help you file a claim, do you?
No, not at all. I mean, obviously, like I said, we've filed claims for people who are not Vietnam veterans, new veterans, family members, whatever.
Okay. Just want to make sure that the people out there understood that y'all are here to help the veterans, and you do not necessarily have to be a member. Again, if you have questions, and you're already logged in, log into the chat part. Make up a name if you like, but log into the chat so you can ask your questions, or dial 919-518-9773 and ask your questions. We've got quite an opportunity here with John Rowan, President of Vietnam Veterans of America, online. He's a busy man. He took time tonight to take a few minutes. I don't think he even had a chance to eat his dinner yet to come on and talk with us and so forth. John, tell me a little bit about this Agent Orange registry. What is the purpose of that, and does it any good?
You're talking about the VA's Agent Orange registry?
Yes, the VA Agent Orange registry. Does it mean anything?
To be honest, it doesn't do that much good, other than at least, again, giving the VA people a list of people that presume that they have some effective Agent Orange. And they do send them materials from time to time to keep them informed. Perhaps not as informative as we would like it to be, and not as often as we would like it to be, but it is an opportunity to do that. There are also Gulf War registries, and I believe there's even a registry now for the new war, the Global War on Terrorism War, and people need to get involved with that too. So I would encourage all the new vets to make sure they go to the VA and access the VA services and take advantage of that. For those of you just getting out, you get 5 years free service no matter what. They have to serve you, so get in there, and then depending on what your issues may be, if you have any health-related issues, please feel free to file a claim.
John, I have a question too, but since we've had a couple of shows on Agent Orange, people come up to Bill and I ask certain questions, and they're always dealing with expediency. How quick can this happen? Should the first step be a blood test? Should I go to the VA directly? Should I go to a service rep? And they really don't know where to start. And I'm new to this. Of course, I'm a Vietnam veteran, and as you well know and you've told us, every Vietnam veteran should have a blood test for Agent Orange, I think, and should register at their VA and have an examination. Am I correct in that assumption?
No.
Okay.
You should get an examination at the VA, that I will tell you, but the blood test is irrelevant. Most people will not get a blood test. They're very expensive. The VA is not going to do it. And it's not necessarily relevant to your filing a claim. Dioxin gets in your blood from lots of different substances. The average person walking around the street's got dioxin in their system. The question is how much and how long it's been there. what the long-term effects of it have been for having been exposed 40 years ago already, 45 years ago for many of us. So that, that blood test wouldn't be all that conclusive. The bottom line is if you go to the website and look at those conditions that have already been identified by the VA as related to Agent Orange, and if you step foot in Vietnam, you're entitled to compensation and you're entitled to health care. To be honest, even if you really got some of these illnesses from somewhere else or it just happened to you, you're still entitled to it. I would just say, please become informed about what the illnesses are and just get to know them and then start to take a look at how your health care is going. And one of the things, not only if you're not sick, that's wonderful, and not every Vietnam veteran got sick. I mean, some people's systems are better than others. Some people were exposed less than others, whatever the case may be. But it should certainly give your doctors, your regular physicians in the private sector, if that's where you go for your health care, a kind of outline of all of the things they should be testing you for. I mean, the PSA is really more important to Vietnam veterans than the average male to test about prostate cancer.
Okay.
Being aware of diabetes is even more important amongst Vietnam veterans than the average person. Prostate cancer is very serious when it comes to Vietnam veterans because we're more likely to get it, and when we get it, it's likely to be more severe than the average man. They tell you, I think if anybody lives to any man that lives to like 95 or something is gonna 9 out of 10 of them are gonna have some version of prostate cancer. Sometimes it's a very slow moving cancer, and that's fine if you happen to have that version of it. You're lucky. But unfortunately, there are more virulent strains of it, and we've seen a lot of people, even people who've had their prostate removed, where the cancer has come back in the areas around the prostate.
Yeah. John,
So
we
it's-
have
it's
a
really
question
important.
here. I'm going to have Amnon Nissan, our producer, to read you the question and
Sure.
see what kind of answer you got.
Okay.
Trouble 2 says, we know that nasty defoliates were used stateside too, especially on large parking lots and airfields. Is anything being done to include these exposures by VA benefits?
No, because most of the people who would be exposed aren't veterans. And the truth is, there's been some private claims for these kinds of things. If you remember, I'm trying to remember the name of the place, Times Beach, I think it was someplace in upstate New York. Had a bad spill of these toxic chemicals, and they had to buy the town. The feds came in and bought the whole town.
Yep. I remember that.
There are private places, and we know, for example, the railroads used it, electrical companies used it along where the electrical lines were, and Love Canal, that was it. Times Beach at Love Canal. Yeah, I mean, so we know that there's places that it was used here, it was used all over the place in Canada and other places as well. But the concentrations and long-term usage may not have been that much. And once they banned it, they stopped using it, and so they learned how to do other defoliants that weren't as toxic.
All right. I understand they have just now started to recognizing people on board the Blue Water Navy, so to speak, and their exposure with handling the drums and so forth. Are they treated just like a boots on the ground a veteran now, or just what is this? How does that status work?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is a real problem for us that we've been grappling with for quite a while with the Blue Water Navy people. What they've managed to do over time is add a significant number of ships that they believe got close enough to shore to be exposed. And that list of vessels can be found on our website under the Agent Orange Committee. And there's a list of all of these ships that they've identified, and they keep adding them all the time. But the real problem is the ones that were further out the shore and never got that close. And we know from the Australians, who frankly have done better work than us on this whole issue, in that the desalination plants that we used on many of these ships made dioxin's concentration even worse. And so that they found out that their people were highly toxic from these desalination plants. The United States, unfortunately, doesn't want to believe that and hasn't followed up on that. We've got legislation that's been languishing, unfortunately, in Congress that has not been granted, that would give us, all the blue water Navy folks who served in Southeast Asia, because we believe all the waters got polluted, compensation under the rules. But we have added other areas, but not formally in the automatic compensation issue, such as Thailand, where the air bases are, along the DMZ in Korea. There's some other places in Korea we're fighting with the VA about, where the stuff was buried and utilized. I mean, there's a laundry list. Again, you can find this on our website. Information from the Department of Defense on herbicide tests and storage outside of Vietnam. And my God, the thing goes on for page after page. Now, the numbers of the amounts and all of that may not be as severe as it was in Vietnam, but it's everywhere. Puerto Rico, Camp Detrick, Orlando, Florida, the Army Grove Air Force Tactical Center, Lake George, Florida, Pinell Mountains near Globe, Arizona, Eglin Air Force Base. I mean, unfortunately, the list is too long to get into, but it can all be identified. And the problem with those claims, unfortunately, if you were in those areas and you believe you were exposed, you can file a claim, but it's going to be a little bit of a battle, and you need to get a really good service rep who knows how to file those types of claims.
John, we have a telephone caller with a question. Go ahead, caller.
Sure.
Hello? Go ahead, caller. I guess they got shy real sudden. If they call back, we'll try to put them on. There was a caller with a question, but evidently they got shy or something else came up. But so the best right now for someone who thinks they're having problems or they have been diagnosed with a problem that's on this laundry list, they need to get in touch with Jim Vale or someone like him at 301-585-4000, extension 149, and get the process started. Was that what you would recommend to someone who thinks they might be having problems due to Agent Orange?
Yes, and they of course can go to VVA.org. That's our main website. And click on the Agent Orange Committee's work. There's lots and lots and lots of information. Unfortunately, what happens is almost too much information. It tends to overwhelm people. And I don't know about anybody else, but when you get into all this scientific stuff, it tends to go over my head. My eyes gloss over. Yeah. So I have to rely on the experts to help me out.
I understand that.
Yeah, sure. So I really encourage people to do that as well. Go talk to a service rep that's from a good organization or the state.
Yeah. We have another question.
Yeah. Signal Geek is saying, I'm in regular contact with 5 guys from my unit, 57th Signal Company, Long Binh.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of us has diabetes, neuropathy, and more. Has anyone got any notion of what percentage overall have AO issues now?
Agent Orange.
Agent Orange issues now.
Okay. Did you hear that, John?
Yeah, I did. The data is, I know there's over 300,000 now, I know, getting a claim for diabetes, and the numbers grow every day as more and more people find that out. And you're right. I mean, this was one of the first diseases that they identified, even though it took them many years later for the VA to finally add it to the list. The folks who actually sprayed Vietnam out of the planes were called the ranch handers. That was the code name, ranch hand. And they actually studied the crew members of those ranch hand flights and compared them to non-ranch handers. And they bring them out to San Diego every 5 years, and they would test these guys and see what was going on. And they were looking for percent deviations and cancers and all kinds of other things. And then all of a sudden, one of the researchers woke up and realized 50% of them were diabetic, which was like off the charts. And, it's one thing to say us chubby guys might be a diabetic, but I have friends of mine who are diabetics that look like athletes.
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine, he's lost all the toes on all his both feet. The guy who worked heart all his life, was always in great shape. He worked as a mail handler in the post office on the side. He worked as a gardener doing Japanese gardens. I mean, the guy was physically worked out his whole life. He's not fat. He's always had the problem, and all of a sudden he's diabetic and had all these nerve problems. And as I say, had lost all the toes on his foot.
Yeah.
Another one of our board members looks like Paul Bunyan. He comes from North Dakota. He was a lineman for the county in North Dakota. I mean, you can imagine what that job was like.
Yeah.
And he looks like Paul Bunyan. The guy's big, tall, strong guy. He was an artillery guy, did 2 tours in Vietnam. And he's got very bad diabetes and, again, the neuropathy. The interesting aspects of the claims with diabetes is the secondary conditions are more damaging almost than the diabetes itself. So if many diabetics have what they call neuropathy, which is the loss of feeling in your hands and your feet and your extremities, you can get a loss of feeling in your legs. You can get peripheral vascular disease, which is the flow of blood to your feet, to your legs, and to your hands. They have hypertension is almost an automatic at some point. It can affect your eyes. It can cause very serious eye problems, and then other kinds of things. So I myself, I'm rated 90% by the VA, mostly for my neuropathy. And diabetes is only a 20% rating at basic diabetic. But if you have neuropathy, you can get more serious numbers up from there, and it just adds up. And there's lots of different side effects from diabetes that every diabetic has to be careful about.
All right, John, we got another caller.
Sure.
Let's try it.
Caller, go ahead.
Hey, Bill, Bob.
Yes.
You're on the air. Ask your question to John.
Yeah, John, this is Rossi from Wilmington. How are you doing?
Hi, Rossi. How you doing?
Excellent.
Rossi,
Well, listen, I stay in close contact with my boys that were in Vietnam with me,
Rossi, you need to go.
and nearly all of them from the first cav is the neuropathy.
Rossi,
The
before you do, hold it,
diabetes.
Rossi.
Rossi, you need to walk away from the computer.
Yeah, I stay in touch with these boys, and all of them have the neuropathy, the diabetes, and strange to the fact, the first cav boys I was with all have PSA levels that run over 11.
Wow.
And no cancer detected. So there's something there that we don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, certainly the neuropathy is very clear. One of the things that we noticed too is what they call pre-diabetics. These are like borderline folks, but what we found out is if you've been pre-diabetic for a long time, you can have the secondary conditions without having the actual condition. Having a full-blown diabetic condition, you can end up with the problems that the secondary condition shows up at. We had one of our board members, one of our friends who had a heart condition that he got before he was actually diagnosed as a full-blown diabetic, but his doctor agreed he probably had the diabetes, was a pre-diabetic for years, and that's what caused the heart problems.
Yep.
So there's lots of things like that. Neuropathy, even on itself now, is a disease that they admit is related to Agent Orange and compensating by itself. So we run into some strange situations. As for the PSA issue, one of the things about the PSA is not so much what the level is, it's what the change is. It's when you see a big change in the PSA. But I would also contend that they really they should get the digital rectal exam and all those wonderful fun things that people have to get their prostate tested. I mean, they should really do it at least on an annual basis, just to stay on top of it.
There's a question. Let's take the caller first. Caller, go ahead.
Good evening, John.
Yes.
Doc Marshall Morris, Mebane, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Former Vietnam corpsman with the 0311s out of Da Nang. Have a question, not so much on the diabetes, but I just was awarded a wonderful Parkinson's disease.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not on Dancing with the Stars, but I'm having a lot of trouble. I put a claim in for A&A here at my Winston-Salem, North Carolina regional office. And it's been about 9 months. wondering the delay in that, not to get off your diabetes policies and procedures, I really appreciate this public awareness. My Purple Heart Commandant Jesse Torres told me you folks have this live feed. Any answers on claims for us veterans that just got Parkinson's disease from the Agent Orange?
Well, Parkinson's now is an automatic, one of the automatic diseases. They added that again also fairly recently. So that I think you said you already have been awarded your compensation for your diabetes, for your Parkinson's. The real question you have was the issue of aid and attendance when you get to that point. You should really have no problem with that. But if you are, then and again, I would suggest you need to make sure that you have an advocate, a service rep, state rep, whoever. That's helped you file your claims. I don't know who filed your original claims, but they should be able to make sure that they stay on top of the VA to get you your aid and attendance when necessary.
All right, and the fees vary from individual to individual. I got a little. I started from the cane to the walker to the rollator, and now I'm on a electric cart that I just bought. I feel as a veteran that needs it more than I do, so I kind of use the. I use my Medicare benefit, and I paid my 20% for the electric car.
Did you get your wheelchair through the VA?
No, sir, Mr. President. I feel, as I tell my VSO here, this is a veteran that needs it more than I do. And
no, that's a bad answer and a wrong answer. First of all, it's got nothing to do with what other veterans need. The VA is in a finite pot. The reality isn't whether they like it or not. Unfortunately, the more claims we submit, the more claims get approved, the more they have to pay, and that's all there is to it. It's one of these open-ended things that the VA has no control over, and the budget has no control over, and Congress really has no control over. If a veteran becomes entitled to compensation, they got to pay it, period. So the fact that you're entitled to get your health care, your assistance, whatever it is you need to take care of yourself as you deal with your Parkinson's, which is a service-connected illness.
Yes, sir.
You should go ahead and go to the VA for this stuff, and it's not going to detract from anybody else getting anything else. It's not the way the system works. And unfortunately, I've heard that from veterans before, and they just don't understand. It doesn't matter whether you're a pauper or a millionaire. If you've earned these rights because of your service, you're entitled to it, period. I mean, quite honestly, I know some Vietnam vets who have more money than God, and they still get their compensation because they earned it. And I would encourage you to utilize the VA, and if the VA is giving you a hard time, go to your service counselor and make sure you get the proper treatment by the VA and the assistance that you need. And if you need a wheelchair, you should have that. If you need aid and attendance, you should have that. God forbid, at some point, if you need a state veterans home, you should be able to get that for nothing. One of the things people don't realize, 100% service-connected veterans are entitled to free nursing home care. If their illnesses are such that they end up in that situation. I hope you don't end up in that situation, but you should be aware of that as well. So, but don't. This idea that if you get something, you're taking it away from some of the veteran, that's not the case, and it's a false idea.
Yes, sir.
John, I'm sorry, caller.
It was more or less of a personal situation. I just felt.
Caller, we got some other people on the line that also want to get a question in. I would suggest that you call that number 301-585-4000, extension 149, and get some advice from Jim Vale on what you need to do to proceed on. And get that recognized.
Right.
And thank you for calling.
You do for us.
Thank you.
Now we have a question or a caller?
Yeah, we have a question. We have another question in the chat that says, how long ago were the ranch hands studied? Numbers might be higher now if much time has passed.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think I'm trying to remember when the last ranch hand study was done, about 8 years ago, maybe? Somewhere in that 8-10 year ballpark, they stopped the ranch hand studies. And in fact, all of the data and all of the samples and everything is sitting in Yale, I believe. Yale University, the feds were going to burn it. I mean, God help us. So that study went on for a long time, probably 20 plus years. They used to bring them back every 5 years, and then finally, at some point, they just stopped doing it when frankly, unfortunately, things started getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
and they probably should have kept it going. One of the problems they had with that is they were comparing them with other Vietnam veterans, which was not necessarily a good test base. They really should have been testing them with people who were stateside and never went to Vietnam.
All right. Thank you, John. We have another question.
With the two bills in progress, what can all of us do to support an action?
You can call your senator, U.S. senators, and your U.S. congresspeople, and say we first of all they should sign on to the bill, and they should ask their leadership to make sure that the bills come out of the House and out of the Senate and go to the president. It's S 2738. It's by Senator Moran from Kansas and Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut. So you've got a Republican and you've got a Democrat. In the House, it's H.R. 5484. That's 5484. And it's by Dr. Benishek. I'm going to mess up this poor congressman's name, but I think it's Benishek. He is from California. Where is he from? Anyway, Dr. Benishek is in the House Veterans Affairs Committee. Michigan, sorry. And he's teamed up with Congressman Honda, a Democrat who is from California. I got those two mixed up. So there's a bill in the House where both Republican and Democrats have signed on, and it's a simple bill. It's much pared down from the original bills that we had submitted. Senator Blumenthal had kind of kicked this off, and then Senator Moran came in and took it over in a sense, and what we got a bill down that they agreed on. And we really think that there's nobody in either the House or the Senate that should complain about it on either party. It doesn't really add any money to the program. This is simply basically says that the VA ought to dedicate the research money that are already in its budget, a substantial portion of it, to do the studies that we outline in this bill. And there's a commission to oversee the operations and to oversee the research and to make sure the research gets done properly and without bias. So, the Republican, the chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee staff has basically said, look, they think they can fast track this thing. It's not a problem. They're just asking that the Senate agree to do it, and before they go ahead and stick their nose out. It's kind of and I don't blame them. Though unfortunately the politics in Congress has been kind of strange over the last couple of years. But the reality is the senators, as I said, we've talked to some of the leadership, and we're talking to them over the next couple of days, have seemed to think they would be willing to go along with this as long as everybody's on board. So that we want to make sure that the Republicans get on board and the Democrats get on board in both the House and the Senate. In this lame duck session where the Democrats are still in control, Senator Reid's staff would have to, as the majority leader for now until January, would have to move the bill in the Senate. As I said, the House Veterans Affairs Committee, the chairman's already agreed to do it.
John, I'll give you a chance to catch your breath here a little bit. For those who are listening and watching the show, it has been recorded. As mentioned, John a while ago said when you go to the VVA website and look at the information, it can be overpowering. John's been putting out some great information, doing a fantastic job tonight, and this has been recorded. You can go back to www.ncbi.org and rewatch the show tomorrow if you need to get this bill, numbers and so forth, or if you just need to get the benefits number, which is 301-585-4000, extension 149. You can go back and archive and see the show again tomorrow. Just want to give John a chance to clear his voice a little bit. I think Mr. Matthews has something to...
I'd like to chime in too, because something John said earlier resonated heavy with me. And John mentioned a lot of people get bogged down in websites. They get bogged down in too much information, and they can't read it all and understand it. Well, I think one of the keys that John made tonight, John, please correct me if I'm wrong, is your service rep is your key. Get a face-to-face person, one-on-one, answering your questions. Take your information with you, your DD-214, and meet your service rep face-to-face. Get the ball started.
Yes, I think you're right. The key is to find yourself a good service rep. The key thing is, don't forget, they're free. Nobody ever gets paid for being a service rep, whether they're from VVA, the Legion, the VFW, DAV, the state of North Carolina, whoever you go to, whatever state you're in. nobody should charge you anything to help you file a claim with the VA. So, you know, I know there's lawyers, but that's only on appeals. But initial claims can be only done, and they can only be done for free. And so it's really incumbent upon people to go to talk to the people that know how to do this. I really urge people, don't try to do it on your own, even if a simple claim is not always easy.
Even if you are not quite certain, you just need more information, call the service rep and talk to them and get some direction. Don't just sit there and think about it. Go out, get in touch with that service rep, tell them what you feel, or if you think you're having a problem or whatever, and get the right direction. As John said a while ago, you serve this country. This country owes you to take care of you out there. So talk to the service reps and see if there's a legitimate claim or whatever is out there. Just don't sit back and think about it or whatever. Just go do it and find out so you have the correct information. You can't make a good decision without all the information possible out there. You get all the information and then you make that decision. There is no right or wrong decision. You just got to have all the information.
Yeah, I think the key to veterans have to understand is the magic words, service connected. The bottom line is your illness or injury or mental condition, whatever the case may be, is service connected. It's related to the time you were in the military, that you served your country. And that's the bottom line. And if your illness or whatever is service connected, then the VA must take care of you, both healthcare wise as well as compensation. And I think that's the most important thing. And if, God forbid, the veteran died of a service-connected ailment or illness, their family, a spouse or dependent children or dependent parents, if that was the case, are also entitled to receive some form of dependency indemnity compensation. And all you got to do is file.
Carry on with what John was just saying. If you know of a Vietnam vet who has passed, speak to the spouse and encourage her to also check with the service rep to see if they are entitled to benefits or whatever. As John mentioned a while ago, there's a lot of widows out there who do not know what's available for them or their children. So if you think there's a possibility of that a veteran has died from something that was maybe related to his service, encourage the spouse to contact a service representative and see if there's anything that can be done or any assistance. It's a shame that we've got widows and children out there of our veterans who deserve, and rightfully so, benefits who don't know anything about them. It's a shame that the more word is not out about those. Mr. Matthews, go ahead.
As Bill just mentioned, I can speak from personal experience. Last week, I received a call from a young woman who is widowed. Husband was a Vietnam veteran and was totally lost with information, lack of information, didn't know what to do. I took Bill's advice and gave her the name of a service rep in our area. He called her the same day and answered 99% of her questions, eased her mind, and she felt so included now. And I think in today's information age, there's so many people that are confused. Encourage your friends, encourage your buddies to talk to each other. Get the word out and do it properly and do it tomorrow.
And Paul is asking, what's the best way to find a service rep?
Paul wants to know what's the best way to find a service rep.
Again, they can write to Jim Vale or send to Jim Vale an email at jvale, V-A-L-E, at vva.org, and just tell them where they live, and we'll be able to tell you where a service rep is near you. I won't. There are other ways of doing that, but I think that's the simplest. You just send Jim Vale an email and say, please help me out. Please tell me the service rep nearest to where I live, and I'm sure we'll be able to find you somebody. Again, there's many counties in the various states provide service reps. Some of the states themselves provide service reps. Most of the veterans organizations provide service reps. So I'm sure there's going to be a service rep near wherever you are, and we'll help you find them.
All right, we've got several good service reps here in the area. The AMVETS has a really good service rep, and we also have worked with some of the other service reps here, and most of them are really good at what they're doing and conscientious to go out there and help the veteran and so forth. So, and I also want to put kudos to the VVA website. It's got some great information as far as spousal benefits and information and so forth. On that, I believe, am I correct, John?
Yes. Yes, and while we've been talking about Agent Orange tonight, there's lots of other issues that the veterans need to be concerned about. I mean, post-traumatic stress disorder, unfortunately, is becoming a serious issue for Vietnam veterans again. Many may have gotten unscathed through the first years after they came home. Unfortunately, when many Vietnam veterans are sitting back after retiring now, they get to going back to those old thoughts that they managed to hide in the closet somewhere. And while we talk about veteran suicide in this country, what we don't realize is 60% of the veterans who commit suicide are over the age of 50. And that really means the Vietnam vets. So there's lots of other issues besides Agent Orange. Hepatitis is a problem for many Vietnam veterans who receive blood transfusions or medics or people who worked around people where there was a lot of blood loss. They may have been exposed to hepatitis C, which is a big problem. So, I mean, there's lots of different health issues that people need to be cognizant of, and they need to talk to people to find out what the real situation is and go to our website.
Yeah. John, let me ask you this question. We're getting short on time here, but there's some I would say there's a lot of veterans out there who got out of the service with less than honorable discharge, which may relate back to post-traumatic stress problems that we didn't know about back then. Has anything been done to reach out to help some of these people? Or is it?
Yeah, unfortunately, we just, interestingly enough, the Secretary of Defense put out a thing recently demanding that the Bureau of Correction of Military Records, the Boards of Correction of Military Records, for each of the branches services should go back and revisit a lot of these bad discharges, or others, as they call them, other than honorable, because many of them were issued very poorly. I used to be involved in something in the late 70s, early 80s, when we did discharge upgrades. Many of them were administrative discharges that were very poorly done. There were no due process. Again, often for those coming back, we had all kinds of AWOL issues and alcohol and substance abuse issues, often related to PTSD. Really did not get a fair shake. Unfortunately, it's a very highly technical way of what you have to do to get that upgraded. We're trying to work with DOD now to see if they can speed up that process for people to be able to file a claim to get their discharge upgraded. We haven't gotten anywhere on that yet, but stay tuned. And again, you should go to our website every once in a while and see what we've got to say about that. If that's an issue for you, you should, again, talk to your service rep to see if there's maybe somebody in your area or in your state who will help you try to file to upgrade your discharge. There is a process for it. Unfortunately, now, because of all these years later, for Vietnam vets in particular, you have to go before a Board of Correction of Military Records, and they're not easy.
Well, John, we're getting short on time. We're about out of time. I want to tell you just how much we appreciate you coming on tonight, taking your time. I know you're a very busy man on the road constantly, but I think we have got enough information out here tonight and resources. That's what it's really all about. It's giving people, veterans out there, a resource to go get help. And your information tonight and your time has been invaluable. We're going to be doing kind of a follow-up show on November 26th, which we can try to have people who call in and maybe got information and call us back and let us know what the situation was with them, since they've got all this great information you've had tonight. And as a member of VVA and 530 over in Durham, the ones over there that have kind of sponsored this with us, we are really appreciative of your time and the VVA's great information on their website. I thank you for being on, and anything we can do to continue to reach out and touch the lives of our veterans, especially our Vietnam veterans, since we just happen to be some. We'd like to let them know that we're here. We do this show twice a month, the second and fourth Wednesday of the month at 8 o'clock. We've had quite a few guests. We've had some POWs on. Bill Schutte, whose helmet was discovered in Moscow in the museum there. He was with Jeremiah Denton. He was the navigator for Jeremiah Denton. He's been on our show a couple times, and his wife. But we just want to thank you for taking your time. You've done a fantastic service to Vietnam veterans. You continue doing that as president of the VVA. Great organization with great words out there. And Bob, you want to say something real quick before we run out?
Just thank you again, John, for your time. It was invaluable tonight. Thank you again.
Thank you. You're
God
welcome.
bless.
And Moki, thank you
up
for
the good
having
work.
John.
Next show is a follow-up.
And the next show is a follow-up for tonight's show. And like I said, anybody that got the information tonight, want to talk, call us on the next show to discuss what they learned, or if they've been able to get benefits for the service officer. We'll be here for the show. Have a nice Thanksgiving, and may the great turkey be good to you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NC VVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Your Healthy Pet with Gisela DiCarlo. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.